How we doing? I thought you were going to go somewhere like former Juanita Raven, but you didn't. You just went with former wide receiver. So I thought you were going to really dig down to my past.
Current professional golfer.
Current professional golfer. I wish. That'd be the dream.
All right. Well, next time I will do a little bit more work on that one. Robert Turbin is going to get an introduction today. Former running back. Still looks like he can play. And I got to be honest, folks, I know you can't see us. I know that you are looking at the offensive linemen. And here's what I often say about offensive linemen. Their arms tend to be the size of my legs. Today, I decided, you know what? I'm going to show off the guns a little bit, right? We're going to go stand at practice, and I'm sitting there, and I'm getting ready, and Robert Turbin comes in with a muscle shirt on. And now, is it not, Bewalt, is this not a muscle shirt? What is this?
This is a Nike Dry Fit cut off shirt.
And you shoulder, right? So that your full arm was exposed, because now I feel like I have toothpicks for arms and I should have lifted before I came to do a live stream.
It was arm day for Turbo today, and I wish there was a curtain between us. I'm really embarrassed right now because I'm not on your level, Turbo.
Day 7 of training camp already? We got a mock game coming up tomorrow. This is going to be our last live stream with you, which I'm already sad about, but let's save those emotions for the very end of this one. Hey, guys, what have you seen up to this point? We talked to the folks on Tuesday and then headed out to practice. What stood out?
I spent a lot of time with the wideouts on Tuesday. I watched them do goal line one-on-ones, which is always one of my favorites because every time, there's a catch or a pass breakup, those guys are jumping up and down like they really scored a touchdown. And it's everything. Those DBs don't want them to cross the goal line. The wideouts are trying to make those touchdowns, and that's always fun to me to watch one-on-ones and watch the wideouts go out. And I look at it and go, man, I used to do that, right? Right, Turbo? You probably look at those and go, every single day we used to grind like that, and it's fun to watch it.
Yeah, every day, one-on-one matchups, man. And you know what I love? I remember how Coach Carroll would set up the matchups in team meeting before practice. These are the matchups you're going to see today during training camp and throughout the season. So mentally, you're preparing yourself like, man, I know I got to go up against this guy today.
And you know that they will be replayed after practice in front of the whole team, your matchups that you did, your reps that you had. So you always wanted to make a good impression, because if you got stuffed, jammed off the line, something, you never wanted to hear it because those defensive guys were barking.
100%.
Yeah, I can see that certainly with some of the personalities on defense. You see, Pete Carroll, we just saw Tyler Lockett a minute ago. We talked to Jackson Smith-Njigba earlier today, the wide receiver the Seahawks drafted, who's expected to be a solid number 3 in that group. Well, I thought it was interesting. One of his comments that I had asked about what needs to be more precise when you make the jump from college to the pros. And what he said was, well, you can't make routes up because your quarterback's counting on you, which we all kind of knew. But he also said Lockett had mentioned to him that the things you do as a wideout help to get the next guy open.
Yeah, absolutely. All these plays are systems. You have to know that sometimes I'm going to run a 15-yard out route and I'm dead in the water because, there's a defensive back there. If you stop that route, you're pulling a guy from somewhere else or putting a guy on someone who you're supposed to have taken that guy out of that zone, right? As I'm going to that corner, I will take that guy, make him commit to me so someone else pops open. And committing to that, knowing you're not going to be open every play. Sometimes the defense will have something called that is going to stop your route. Your route is not going to be the one open. So you're just knowing you're pulling guys away to allow other guys some open space.
Yeah, that's huge. Jackson, line up in the slot. Imagine him running, a seam route down the middle of the field. And what does that do, man? That brings the safety, that brings the linebacker that's running with him and ultimately opens up the middle of the field for an underneath inside route to come. We call that a dig route, from that outside receiver. So being able to put yourself in position to kind of serve as a decoy is going to be huge for Jackson. And I think the other thing that's a huge adjustment, and I'd love to get your opinion on this.
Exactly, and not only pre-snap, but the first split second or 1 second after the snap. Because in college, teams will show pre-snap quite a bit what they're going to run, and you will know it, and you don't have to make the adjustments on the fly. But a lot of times in the NFL, teams are trying to fool you. Teams are showing one way, and then right at the snap or right just a split second before the snap, they're rolling to another coverage.
Absolutely.
And being able to have your eyes up and, you're seeing the ball, you're seeing the coverage, and to be able to make those adjustments on the run is a big thing that a rookie's definitely got to get used to.
Yeah, and I think some of it is we get used to talking about this as football fans. I do think that there's still a chasm when the player is trying to execute at a different level. And right now, quite honestly, these guys don't know. This is across the board. They don't know what they don't know. Mock game tomorrow, they're going to get a better feel, but you're not really going to understand until you get into preseason week 1 and then week 1 of the regular season. So just talking through and having a guy like Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf to say, look, you can't get away with what you used to. I know you're really talented. You can't get away with what you used to get away with in college.
Yeah, not in the league. I mean, these guys, they've seen so many different things. These coaches have seen all sorts of different players, all sorts of different offensive schemes. And so, really being disciplined in what you're doing and precise is going to be a huge learning curve for him. And the mock game, for the most part, is just more about getting your routine together, pre-game as far as, how you want to set yourself up in preparation for game day.
Yeah, and taking Jackson Smith and Jigba, for instance, he's gonna go into these games and he's gonna be shocked by how much scouting has been done on him of just college, right? These coaches are gonna look back at his
100%.
college tape and know his little moves, his intricacies, his tendencies, and they'll have scouted that, and so he's gonna have to do a good job of making adjustments as he goes there as well.
We are actually going to flip the script here in just a minute and talk about defense. We want to talk about that front seven. We want to take a look at what they've done across that defensive line as they've got new personnel in every position. But before we get to that, we do not talk about special teams a whole lot, but we have also seen that can be a big difference maker for this Seahawks team in particular. Last year, they started to get back to what we expected, I think. I think 2021 was a little bit of a down year, and they were the first ones to say that. Did you guys happen to watch kick return in practice? And I know, again, this is not something we would normally talk about. Godwin Igwebuike is not here anymore, and so that job is open. DJ Dallas is back there. D. Eskridge has an opportunity. Trey Brown might be able to do that, one of the secondary. And Kenny McIntosh returned kicks in college.
I think DJ has the most experience at it, so far, especially with the Seahawks. I really like the way that he approaches it. He really does a good job getting downhill as the ball is, coming down from being kicked. That way he's, gaining leverage and momentum going forward, as he's trying to hit, whatever the blocking scheme is in front of him from a kickoff return standpoint. I love the way that he gets downhill. I think it's natural for him because, as a running back, that's his running style as well, being a downhill runner. Not saying that the other guys can do it, but it's been cool to see that competition. I saw a couple of reps Tuesday, saw a little bit yesterday, and it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I agree. To see DJ Dallas back there, obviously he has the most experience, but it'll be interesting to see how long he stays back there if his roles increase as a running back.
Yeah.
Right? And then that'll allow a guy like D. Eskridge, who will probably be, the 4th, 5th receiver, to get his reps and make an impact, especially during this preseason, to see if that's one of his roles on the team. Maybe there, maybe punt return and things like that. The more you can do. So I like seeing Trey Brown back there as well. It's, the more you can do again. And with the secondary as loaded as it is, that's going to have to be a little niche that he might fall on.
And that is actually one of the things that we keep the closest eye on in the preseason, right? If you want to know what to look at guys making a name for themselves on special teams, because you're not going to get a whole lot of starters out there. I don't know what their plan is yet for week 1 of the preseason, but if I had to tell you to look at anything, I would tell you to look at special teams, right? That's where you win a job.
Yeah, I mean, guys have really carved out amazing careers predicated upon special teams, based off special teams. Heath Farwell is a guy that we were teammates with early in our careers who, played a number of years, double-digit years, particularly because of his impact on special teams. Obviously, we know about Matthew Slater in New England. There's a ton of guys.
Nick Ballore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Nick Ballore has been one of the stalwarts there.
100%.
And not only being a career special teamer, all-pro special teamer, but that's how guys will make an impact to become, a great receiver. You take a guy like Doug Baldwin, right?
Yeah,
he started on special teams. He's blocking punts. I go around the league and I look at a guy like Adam Thielen. He really made an impact on playing special teams for the Vikings. He was doing everything, and now he's a Pro Bowl receiver. So it's just getting yourself on the field and knowing and getting the coaches to notice you athletically as a playmaker. I mean, that's the biggest thing for special teams.
And one last point to that, too. It's interesting, Jen. You know, these guys, they become captains of your team, like real leaders, you know, so their impact is huge.
Speaking of huge, how about the guys on the defensive line? Those are the guys that we are looking at now. And I'm just going to call out that number 99 and seeing Cooper on the back and not Woods, that one's throwing me a little bit. However, not nearly as large as Al Woods, who is now with the Jets, who was in the middle of that Seahawks defensive line last year. Let's just kind of set the stage here for this. Defensive line and linebackers, that's the conversation that we are going to have today. That was the biggest turnover that the Seahawks saw in the offseason, bringing in a number of new guys across that front three, if you're counting that 3-4 defense. Draymond Jones signs from the Broncos. Jaron Reed returns after being gone for a couple of years, but he's got a new spot. We'll talk about that in just a second. Mario Edwards, he was a signee from the Texans, and then you have drafted a few guys that you expect to be playmakers. Let's start there, and then we will go to the next level and hit Bobby Wagner. Guys, what do you like about the personnel that the Seahawks have up front and how they are already using nose and their two ends?
Well, one of my favorite pickups this offseason was Jaron Reed, you know, for the Seahawks. I just feel like he's a straight-up dog, you know, when it comes to the defensive line. And he had a huge impact during his first stint with the Seahawks. You know, a lot of folks thought it was a huge loss when he left and went out to Green Bay, and you could kind of see it, you know, a little bit in the middle of the defense. So to have him back, I think is big time for this defensive line, not only from a physicality standpoint, but from just from a knowledge and vet standpoint. I think he's going to have an impact, a leadership standpoint, and you know, he's one of my favorite signings. I'm really excited to see this front seven pan out.
You know, I always try to avoid the defensive line. They're just big, mean guys. I walk through the locker room, I turn my shoulder. So, you know, talking about them is a little strange for me. But, you know, these guys, it's going to be all about who's going to rise up and really make that impact. You know, is it going to be, they're going to be relying on rookies here. You know, is Cameron Young going to step up and be that nose tackle that, you know, to replace Al Woods and, you know, with Monet, you know, injured for a little bit of this season. So they're going to rely on some young guys to really step in and make an impact here. And it'll be interesting to see how Draymond Jones and Bobby Wagner, you know, how they kind of develop that repertoire or their relationship together where they're, you know, filling the right gaps and making sure they're on the right page. But, you know, I think they're improved from last year, which is a huge thing.
I do too.
Well, yeah, and when you look at the numbers, look, here's why they needed to show improvement. When it comes to the running game, they allowed almost 5 yards a carry. It was 4.9. That was 26th in the NFL. That was more than a yard greater than their yards per carry allowed the year before. I know that's a lot of words. All it means is they were not very good at stopping the run. They allowed 161 yards in 5 straight games. 4 of those were losses to fight for that wild card spot. That is one of the reasons that they made these moves. When you think about how quickly can you turn over a defense and make a dramatic impact, I know that there's a lot of conversation around there. And honestly, what I would say is just play the scheme. You've got the guys, just play the scheme this year, which they couldn't do last year. And there was a number of reasons for that. And it's nobody's fault. You had a new defensive coordinator. Right. You were trying a new scheme. You had your guys in place. I think play the scheme, right?
Play the scheme. And like you said, it's hard to, you know, kind of play at a high level when you're, you know, somewhat adjusting on the fly in some respects. You're putting in a new system. And so whenever there's a new system, B-Wall, I'm sure you can relate to this, like there's a lot of changes that kind of happen. There's evolution that happens actually during the season. It's not like something you install before the season and it just like stays status quo throughout the entirety of the year. There's a lot of changes and adjustments that happens, but now you've had a full off season under this system. You're going into your second year. You've got a lot of guys who are familiar with this system now. Now, obviously, you got a lot of new pieces as well, but, you know, veteran players. Jaron Reed's a veteran. Draymond Jones, veteran. Mario Edwards, who's probably seen a ton of different defensive schemes over the course of his career, a veteran. And so, you know, if you're able to develop that chemistry between these guys, I think it could certainly spell for an improved defensive line.
I just hold up. We're seeing Derek Hall, one of our rookies, and he has got a fashion-forward choice right now. B-Wall, is Derek Hall and his outfit choice, like, is it comparable, the leg choice comparable to Turbo's shirt choice
I was
today,
just gonna
right? We're
say.
accentuating different things, but essentially it's
me tell you
the
something.
same read, right?
Exactly. I was just gonna say. I mean, is that Turbo with the tank
Yes.
top right now?
No,
But
it ain't.
you wouldn't wear those?
No. And if I stepped on the field and that was the guy that I was going up against on defense, I'm feeling confident in myself.
Really? Because let me
because of the shorts alone.
point this out. Let me just point out he is 6'3", 254. He's a rookie out of Auburn. I don't. He's got some explosiveness.
Yeah, he's got some explosiveness. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna
He
lie. He might get on me. He might get on me. Yeah. Hey, he's gonna be a heck of a player one day. I ain't gonna lie. You know. But I don't like the shorts. I'm gonna have to tell him as his brother, as a teammate, like, hey, bro.
Look.
You know.
If my legs look like that, maybe that's how I would wear my shorts.
There's a different way you can wear short shorts. You know. I think.
I think this conversation is going the wrong direction very, very quickly. Meanwhile, when we talk about those guys up front, Jay Reed, and I love Jaron coming back, in my mind, I keep thinking, and I don't know why, and I know it is unfair to compare people to Al Woods because, as Pete Carroll pointed out, everybody in the world is smaller than Al Woods. I felt like Jaron Reed was maybe a little too small to play nose. And yet, when I look at his numbers, he's 6'3", 306.
Yeah.
Now, Al was about 25 pounds heavier. I think the weight was distributed. I mean, seriously, I think Al was a little taller, and one-arm tackles were kind of his thing.
Mm-hmm.
How do we feel, though, about Jaron in the middle? Is it too light? Does it give him more, like, agility? What?
Mm-hmm.
How should I be feeling about this right now?
I think we should feel confident about Jaron. As long as he's embracing the position and understanding what entails, what comes with being, you know, a nose tackle, this Seahawks defense is going to be much improved. Now, we understand that he's used to playing a three technique or a one technique, which, you know, provides a lot of opportunity to, like, get in the backfield.
And this is kind of the thing, right?
Yeah, you know, but and the nose tackle does not really, you know, provide that opportunity. You're there to soak up other offensive players so other people can make plays. Mentally, that's just something that you have to embrace. But Jaron Reed has always been a team player.
Absolutely.
And he's excited to be back and be a part of this defense, and I think it's a role that he can really excel in.
Yeah, and I see him being a nose tackle and, you know, jetting out to defensive
maybe
end as
sliding
well.
out,
You know,
yeah.
he might do a little of everything, but as long as he's that anchor in there and, you know, he holds his ground, clogs those holes and plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage, you know, he's going to be a great addition to this defense.
Well, and Cameron Young's name was mentioned earlier. He is a true nose as well. The rookie out of Mississippi State comes in at 304. Mike Morris could also be. He's listed as a DN, but also I think he's got a little bit of time in the middle of the line. So it doesn't have to be Jay Reed all the time. And I do think that they would slide him out just a little bit because he's got experience in that pass rush role.
Right. I see Cameron Young as being, I know we drafted those rookie, you know, the first round guys and all that, but I see Cameron Young having one of the biggest impacts on this team this season because of, one, you're trying to fill a position that maybe you struggled at last year. And so he's going to be relied upon a ton this year. And, you know, for him to come in as a rookie, he's going to have a lot on his shoulders. And, you know, I think he's gotten high praise so far. So excited to see what he can do, especially this preseason.
He actually just ran by. He is number 93. It's tough to see his name because it is covered by a hoodie. But number 93 is Cameron Young, for those of you watching. And in fact, there he is right there. So, yeah, he's built to take on some blockers. What do you think?
Oh, I agree with that 100%. And he could have a huge impact, one of those under-the-radar guys. I love under-the-radar guys, be able to see them excel and really burst out onto the scene. One of the things I really like about this defensive line, you know, you talk about Jaron Reed being able to move around a little bit. It kind of seems like a lot of our guys can do that, you know, on the defensive line.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, doesn't this indicate just a slightly different style of defense than what we've seen?
Yeah, it creates a lot more versatility. I think there's a little bit more depth than at the defensive line than maybe the Seahawks had last year, but certainly, you know, more versatility. You look at Al Woods and Poona Ford were a couple of guys that they had last year. Not necessarily guys you felt like you could move around on the defensive line, you know what I mean, like that. And you look at the guys that we have now, Mario Edwards, Draymond Jones, you know, Jaron Reed that we just talked about, all guys that in some respects, you can move around on that defensive line and really set up some nice schemes for him.
I will point out, in the defense of both of those guys, we did see them running sideline to sideline and
Well, of
Puna
course.
dropping into
Of
coverage. I'm just going to
course.
say that
We did see
because
Puna drop into coverage.
because my guys would want me to point that one out. Our conversation about the D-line also bleeds into linebackers. Part of it is just the way that they categorize a guy like Darrell Taylor and Uchenna Nwosu, but it also brings us into the conversation with Bobby Wagner. All of this is going to come together because I do think that he is a key piece. You just can't show him anything that he hasn't already seen. And isn't that part of it when you are talking about run defense and getting, staying in your lanes, fitting in the gaps? It's all about recognition, right?
Yeah, pre-snap recognition is huge, to be able to understand and have more than an idea, but have an understanding really of, where plays are going and why. Maybe it's a tight end motion, maybe it's, an indication from the three-point stance of an offensive line, maybe it's a certain hand signal. But these are all things that, Bobby, because of his experience going into year 12, I believe it is now, he's seen it all. He's heard all the adjustments, and so it's hard to hide things from him. And because of that, he can then put other guys in position on that defense to be successful.
I think that's the most important thing is what is Bobby going to be teaching everyone around him? And it's going to be everything. I mean, you hear Bobby talk about, defense or what offenses are showing, what gaps he's filling. I mean, I was listening to him today. He was doing an interview, and I was blown away by it. He's like, oh, nickel goes here, I'm going here, blah, 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 and tight ends are moving. And I was just like, what just happened? And to know, I mean, that's just natural for him. He's done it for so long that he's not thinking about it anymore. He's not a step slow with it anymore, at all. He's reacting to all that just naturally. He just knows where to go when certain things are flowing, which gap he's adjusting to. And that's a big thing he talked about too, is how as plays develop, your gap can change, right? The gap that you are supposed to fill can change, and that has to be, you can't hesitate or else you're pinned. And there's a big hole, and they're going to gash you for, 5 yards of play or whatever we talked about they did last year. So being able to react to those changes like naturally is something that Bobby brings to this defense.
We expect to see him paired with newcomer Devin Bush. Jordan Brooks has been on the field. I talked to him a couple of days ago. He says he's feeling great. He is still listed on the PUP list right now. They can be activated at any time off the PUP list because we are in training camp. So that doesn't mean that he is missing any time at this point. But Bobby is wearing the green dot. Jordan had the green dot last year. The green dot means that you call the defense. You've got direct communication with Clint Hurt on the sidelines. So here is the question that could stir up the most controversy. Bobby Wagner never comes off the field. He has been so incredibly healthy and durable and consistent. Could this be the first year that he takes some reps off and that he can take reps off? Let me rephrase that he can, because of the way this system runs. Turbo is frowning at me as if he's about to start a fight.
No, not at all. I just don't really see it. Unless Bobby wants to, unless he needs a breather. I don't know if I see it in this defense still, even with the depth.
Okay, go ahead,
I agree 100%. Bobby's earned everything that he's gotten, and if he wants to be on that field, it's going to be his call in the long run. He's a playmaker, and you know what? A lot is going to have to do with, how does Devin Bush step up into that role as well? How has he been playing? And Jordan Brooks coming back after his his knee stuff. How is he going to come back? And is he going to be 100% right when he gets back on the field? So I see Bobby taking every single snap again. I really do, because there's just too much. He's the constant right there. Bobby is your constant in the center.
Would you ever, as a player, and I know how competitive you guys are, would you ever, as a player, say, you know what? I understand that if I play 30 less reps this year, that I might be able to extend my career by another season, right? And that might be my numbers might be right, not be right, right? Like, if I play 5 less plays a game, if I save 25% of the reps that I was going to play, because by the way, part of and Bobby looks awesome, but let me just say, the defense has been on the field a lot the last few years. There are a lot of snaps on his body. What if you said, look, we can get you another year? Would you as a football player say, yeah, I'll think about it? Or is there just too much competitiveness and uncertainty that you would say, nah, I'm going to play every snap?
Honestly, I don't think Bobby's thinking about that. I don't think he's thinking about next year or the year after. I think he's in the moment, and he wants to win now. He wants to play in that game, that next snap. And I think that's always been Bobby's mindset, right? Just being right there in the moment. And so if you were to tell Bobby, hey, next year, you know, this will help you next year and the year after, he'd be like, well, what about this year? What about this snap? What about this game? You know, we have to go beat the 49ers now. And I think that is Bobby's mindset going into every single game.
Yeah. And, you know, there's just some positions out there that are non-negotiable when it comes to rotation. And that Mike linebacker spot is one of them, you know, historically. You know, for me as a running back, you know, if I've averaged 25 carries over the course of my career, and, you know, coach says, hey, you know, instead of 25, you know, how do you feel about 18? You know, then I might say, you know, okay, running back is a rotational type of position. It can be. And if I'm going to get, you know, 6 or 7 less carries per game, I may not love it, but I know it's benefiting me, you know, for my future. I'm still going to have an opportunity, guaranteed, to go out there and still be able to ball out, score touchdowns, be able to, you know, make some plays offensively. Then I may consider that. But that's because that's the running back spot. Defensive line, same way, right? You can rotate. But man, I don't want, you know, I don't want my, you know, if I'm the Eagles, all right, and you know, Jason Kelsey's been my starting center for 13 years. I'm not necessarily sure I want him rotating in and out, okay, just because I want him to stay.
Now, that's an entirely different position. Wait a minute.
Just saying.
You just went on the other side of the line.
I'm just saying.
Man,
So
I'm just asking because,
are,
you know, that was a conversation in bringing Bobby back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we saw what was happening, it was the conversation of, does he stay on the field for third down?
Absolutely.
And I think what we're starting to see is that we do expect him to be on the fields the entire time. Thanks for watching Training Camp Live, powered by Boeing. We'll see you in the season.